American badass and hero. Tonto, thanks for being our guest, bud.
Hey, Michael, thanks. I think some of my children would take a dip for a sale of a badass. Things like that, brother. But thanks for the introduction.
They might say you're a bad dad because you took away all the fun stuff, right?
Yeah, I took away all their fun. I grounded them from the PlayStation. Yeah, that's about right. Well, thanks for having me on the show, man. I appreciate it.
And I want to tell our listeners in Albany and upstate New York listening on WGY that Kris Paronto will be a guest of the Republican Party of Albany County on September 2nd at Treviso's in the Italian American Community Center on Washington Avenue Extension in Albany. And tickets are available at albanygop.org, albanygop.org. And then he will be here just north of Houston on September 24th. And I've got those details somewhere, but I'll get those to you before we're through talking. We're going to have him on for a little bit here. So tell me, if you would, a little bit about, take a minute or two.
Sure.
Before September 11th, who are you and why were you there?
Well, we're working with the Global Response Staff. That is it's a security element of the Central Intelligence Agency. And our bread and butter job is basically to provide protection to case officers, assets, those sort of things. Very low profile, not like the earpieces. You're not showing weapon systems. You're trying to meld and blend in with the community, which is it becomes a very, very common thing to do for us, and it's actually quite fun. I enjoyed it. You really get to know the community. You get to know the ins and outs, the atmospherics of the cities you're in, and really that was what we were doing. Now, as far as there's some classified stuff, Michael, and because of my non-disclosure, I can't talk about it too much. I think more of that's going to be coming out with Trey Gowdy, of course, with his committee, and he can talk about that. But the biggest thing that we're doing there was collecting intelligence to capture and kill terrorists that were in the vicinity there and also in Egypt. Remember at that time, that's when the Syrian we were backing, and when I say we, the U.S. was backing moderate Syrian rebels to overthrow the Assad government, and that kind of backfired. So we were, we were there generally just it's anti-terrorism operation, and that's the gist of it right there.
Tonto, tell us what was happening prior to September 11 in the days leading up to that, because one of the things that Trey Gowdy's trying to get to in the emails is the belief that Christopher Stevens and others, perhaps you and other security consultants, were suggesting that there was a real threat and that the compound should have been vacated.
Oh yeah, Benghazi was an extremely dangerous place, and your listeners, they can take this with any validity from me. I spent 10 years overseas before Benghazi. I worked in Kandahar. I worked in Baghdad. I worked in the Sadr City area. I worked in Mosul, Kabul, all these places. And Benghazi rated right up there. The only difference with Benghazi is that we didn't have the military assets like we did in those other countries to facilitate a good response if something happened. So the State Department folks, Alex Henderson, Scott Wicklund, Dave Ubin, the gentlemen that were the State Department security officers, along with Eric Nordstrom, they had been requesting additional security, additional weapon systems in Benghazi for approximately 6 months prior. And we were partaking in that because we were the ones that were advising them that they needed to up their security, or else they were. I remember putting it point blank to Scott Wicklund when I asked him, hey, is this all you have here at this facility? Because you guys are really undermanned. I said to him, if you guys don't get more people here, you're going to die. And I said, just like that.
Tonto, let me interrupt you, Tonto. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm guessing that the people that you're making these requests to are getting requests from every location for more firepower. Everybody wants more of what they want more of, and maybe their job is just to manage that.
That would seem like a good answer, but also, Michael, there's the thing, is those places that would be requesting more, if they would, because I worked in Yemen as well, and I worked with the State Department protecting Ambassador Khalilzad, Ambassador James Jeffries before the CIA, they did have the essential weapon systems. They did have a Marine security force there. They did have security contracting companies there, Blackwater, Aegis. Benghazi had none of that.
What were you requesting? What was the request for specifically?
More personnel, more security officers, a third-party contracting firm in Aegis, and then also weapon systems, machine guns, not just little rifles, and just more personnel from the State Department. Not us. CIA, we were fine. We had our facility. We had our guys. We knew how to protect our chief, and we proved it that night. But the State Department was requesting more, and that was through their officers there, Scott Wickley and Alec Anderson and Dave Hubin. So personnel and weapon systems, which is really that's what a security officer is going to request. And I don't believe in any case that the other facilities would have been requesting or would have been in need of those sort of increases in security more than Benghazi. And that's just from my experience working in other areas, Middle Eastern countries and countries in North Africa, for the CIA and State Department.
Tonto, I got about a minute and a half in this segment. We'll talk some more on this subject. But when you look back, and hindsight's always 20/20, did they have, whoever that was, and we'll talk about who it was that attacked the compound, whether it was Libyans or not, did they have more firepower than you assumed they had at that moment?
Yes, and you know what? That goes back to intel failures, which of course, we play a part in that as well. When they brought the mortars to bear, that was when we knew that's what we weren't ready for. And I don't think the military or the State Department or the agency was ready for it, because we had requested air support that night when we were getting attacked to offset anything that we didn't know they had, and we didn't get it. So the mortars really shocked us, and the dead hits of the mortars right on target, that shocked us, and that killed Tyrone and Glenn, right off the bat. So yes, sir, that's I have to say yes, and then we maintain responsibility for that as well, along with the other entities that were involved.
Tonto, I'm going to hold you right there. He's going to be in Albany. It's going to be an interesting evening. I encourage our upstate New York listeners. Republican Party of Albany County will have him as their guest on September 2nd. Tickets $45 for general admission, $100 for pre-event special, where you get to spend some time with him. And he'll be here on September 24th. I'll have those details here in Houston, that is, or just north of it. Coming up, we'll talk about what exactly happened for 25 minutes when he was told to stand down. In the book, 13 Hours, he said, "I regret not disobeying orders." That's a strong statement. We'll ask him why coming up next.
The Michael Berry Show. This is The Michael Berry Show.
If you got a good patio covering out back, you can maybe sit outside. But it won't be that long. My wife and I were just talking about this, till we'll be back in the part of the year where you really appreciate living in Houston. And that's when it gets to be the fall, and it's cool. You get home, you want to sit outside with a glass of bourbon or wine or iced tea or coffee. My parents drink decaf coffee till about 8 o'clock at night. It's crazy. Whatever it is your drink of choice is, you want to sit outside near the pool, you want to sit out, you got the walkways and all that. Allied Outdoor Solutions. The superior look of real stone on your existing surface for less. The fact that it's your existing surface is where you save all the money, because you don't have to rip all that out and replace it. You just use what you have as the base, the substructure. Find out more and how good it looks. 713-465-0400. AlliedOutdoorSolutions.com. 713-465-0400.
Everything that you need to know by the time you get to where you are going. Houston's Morning News.
You have access to a lot of information, but who has time to go through all of that? That's what we do.
Tomorrow, 5 to 8.
It's your morning news feed.
On 740 KTRH. This report is brought to you by Lone Star College.
Invest in yourself at Lone Star College. 2 years at Lone Star College plus 2 at any university equals a 4-year degree that saves you thousands.
2012. Tonto, if we could, let's get to the day it happened. Start us off.
Well, it's normal day, and for us anyway. Basically, nobody was attacking us. It was very quiet throughout the day. We had normal operations, and then getting through that evening, I'll skip ahead. And when I do speak, I go in a little bit more detail, but for lack of time, we got a call that there was that we needed a muster in the team room from our leadership there, our staff, CIA staff leadership, around 9:31, if I remember correctly. I remember looking at my watch, and walked out the front door, and you could see the attack going on. It was pretty incredible. I don't think you've really lived. You see tracers and bullets and explosions shooting in the distance. We're only 3/4 mile away, and you can see those pretty clear, especially at nighttime. It looks like a fireworks show, and we had word that the consulate was under attack, and we mustered all our gear, myself, Tyrone Woods, and Jack Silva, and the rest of the guys. And we were ready to go within 5 minutes, and we were told to wait by our leadership, our chief of base and our staff team leader. And keep in mind, during this time frame, we're getting calls from the State Department, from Alex, Scott, and Dave, who we've become very good friends with, that they needed our assistance because they were under attack, and it was obvious because we could see and hear it. It's pretty tough to sit there and wait and watch and hear your friends being under attack and being under some serious life-threatening situations, and you're just kind of sitting on your thumbs when you're waiting to go over there and assist, and that's what your job is, and that's what you get paid for, and that's what you're trained to do. So we waited, and then we waited 10 more minutes, so it's 15 minutes now, and that's when the actual words "stand down" were told to us by our chief of base. I remember Tate got out of his vehicle, John Tate Tigan got out of his vehicle and said, "Hey, we need to go now, we're losing the initiative," and Bob ran up to him and vehemently says, "You guys need to stand down." And again, we're waiting another 10 minutes.
Tonto, let me interrupt you, because in 13 hours, there's a reference to Bob from the CIA. Is that who gave the order?
Yeah.
Who is Bob?
Yeah, that's
or do you think we'll ever know who Bob is?
Well, no, Bob is the chief of base. He's the chief of base there at the CIA. He was a staff officer that has since been retired. Got his retirement. He was awarded the Star for Bravery, which I don't really know why. And he was also given a contracting job there at the farm. So he's doing quite well for himself. But
do you think that order came from him, or do you think that came from above him and he was just the messenger?
No, I think he had some say in it by relaying information on how serious the attack was. So I think he has some involvement with it, but it did come from higher too. Yeah, it came from the chief of station, which is in Tripoli, who since would have come from our line of chain of command, from the CIA chain of command. Can I say that particular stand down came from the State Department or DOD, Department of Defense, which would be the military? No, I don't know about that. But within our own 25-minute time frame, from the CIA all the way up to the top, yes, it would have filtered on down.
Why do you believe you were given the order to stand down?
I think some of it has to do with them not realizing how serious the situation was, because you have civilians in charge during a military operation. I also think that some of it might have been that they didn't want to show their hand that the CIA was actually there in the country. That was part of it. So, and then essentially it's just bad judgment. It's come down to it. And that is me being optimistic. That's the best case scenario. I don't want to jump out on a limb and say, hey, them being the people up in D.C. wanted all of us to die. That's for Trey Guy. That's for him to decide to figure out. Can I rule that out? No, I can't. I can't say for certain, no, that didn't happen. And that hurts when you're sworn to protect the United States and their government, and you don't know, maybe they just left you there to die, because when it came right down to it, when it finally ended 13 hours later, we had to commandeer our own aircraft to get out of Benghazi. We had to commandeer Libyan aircraft to actually get out of there with our dead and our wounded. So, but that's at the end of the story.
Tonto, as I understand it, 25 minutes go by, and then
yes,
you and your guys ignore the stand-down order?
Yes, we do. And it was, I remember it clear as day. I remember Ty looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and again, Ty passed away that night. And
that's Tyrone Woods, right?
Tyrone Woods, yes, yes. And he gave me a thumbs up, and I gave him a thumbs up, and we all had ordered in our vehicles, and we rolled out the gate. And I remember saying, telling our team leader, get in the effing car, we're going, we're not waiting any longer. And what people miss out of this, what the media doesn't capture. A lot of the media has captured now that, yes, it did take us 25 minutes to leave. There was a delay. They don't realize that we did lose the initiative, and we had to fight our way on foot to get to the compound, which cost us another 25 minutes. Because they had actually solidified and blocked all the roads that we could have drove down. So we had to disembark our vehicles and actually start jumping backyard walls and fighting our way into the compound. And so by the time we actually got onto the compound, it was completely in fire. It was been about almost an hour, and we had to throw a lot of 40-millimeter grenades just to get the fighting positions out of the way so we could actually get into the compound and start to clear it. And that compound was 8 acres large. It's 2 football field size large. So it wasn't an easy task.
And so, as I understand it, Tonto, you discovered Sean Smith's body, but you noticed the ambassador was missing.
We spent an hour and a half trying to find and get into the burning building where they were. Jack Silva and Dave Ubin found Sean Smith's body. He had already died of smoke inhalation. I do remember seeing Jack trying to resuscitate him. I think that was more for the psyche of Dave and the State Department guys. But you could tell he was dead by the time we got there. You can, whatever movies you see, don't believe them. When somebody's dead, you can tell they're dead. And the ambassador, though, we actually stayed on the compound for about an hour and a half, fought off a counterattack to try to find him in that burning building. And it was like a pizza oven. It was incredibly hot. Smoke was intense, diesel fumes. And it was more just running in as far as you could, feeling around and running back out, tagging hands and running back in again, and the other person taking your security position to lay fire down to people trying to lay fire to Ansar Sharia and Al-Qaeda were trying to actually overtake the compound once we took it from them an hour before.
Tonto, let me ask you, who do you think you were fighting?
Ansar Sharia and Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb. Those are the two entities, and that's pretty solid. That's verified that Ansar Sharia was there, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, and also 17th February Martyr Brigade, who was the contracting company that the State Department had a contract to the local force to protect the consulate. They were also part of that as well.
And how could you tell that? Were they wearing identifying?
No. After the fact, they took responsibility for it. That was what it was via social media, and then through our contacts within the agency. Now, some of us still maintain friendly relationships with a lot of the counterterrorism people in the agency, and they would tell us through assets that we still have in certain countries, maybe who attacked us. So it was a lot of it behind closed doors. But eventually, it came out on social media, and it came out as verified through even our media sources because it was leaked. Somebody leaked it within the agency, and it came out on CNN or Fox, or I think all of them actually, to be honest with you. And then 17th February Martyr Brigade, the company that was supposed to be protecting the consulate, the next day they came out and swore their allegiance to Ansar Sharia. So it was a bad scene throughout. So
Tonto, hold with me just a moment. Kris Paronto, nicknamed Tonto, the former Ranger, years of experience doing this. So you watched what was unmistakably an attack on the compound in Benghazi. You were given the stand down order twice. Let me not put words in your mouth. 3 times.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times, yeah.
25 minutes in, you violated orders and said, we're going in anyway, and you did. One of your buddies who went in with you was Tyrone Woods, who, of course, was killed in all of this. And was Chris Daugherty part of your group, too?
Glenn Daugherty. Glenn was actually the team from Tripoli. Okay. Our GRS guys are from Tripoli that came in, and Glenn, thank God for Glenn, because he's the one that assisted getting one of the planes to us for us to get out of there.
Okay.
And Glenn's a hero too. He's I worked with him in Tripoli. Incredibly brave individual, along with Tyrone. Incredibly brave people.
So you're making trips in and out over the course of how much time to keep fighting off these guys?
Well, we did it till around midnight.
Right. 5 o'clock DC time, because that's going to be important.
Yeah. And once we did that midnight, we realized that, you know what, we're probably not going to be able to find the ambassador. We've been searching for an hour and a half. You know, we had been through some counterattacks. We shot a couple of their RPG gunners, their rocket stone grenade gunners, and we're like, what do? We need to either get back to our place to defend it, or we're going to stay here and keep looking. And we at that time we didn't know if he'd been kidnapped. We had no idea if he was even in that burning building. And that still haunts me, and I think it haunts the rest of the guys too, and me definitely. That you never leave a fallen comrade to fall in the hands of the enemy, and we made the decision to leave. And essentially, he was found in the very back corner of his safe room, and it bothers me because we left him. We left his body there. He was dead, of course, but we left his body. But it was a decision. It was a tough decision, and you know, looking back on that was the right decision because we ended up fighting 3 more counterattacks off at our annex, at our facility, pretty vicious attacks, and that's where we lost Ty and Glenn, the last one where they hit us with mortars, and that's when one of the guys was seriously injured, and you know, luckily they were able to reattach his arm, but basically his arm had been blown off, and he almost bled out up on that roof that night too.
Now, reports I got, Tonto, were that y'all killed about 40 of their guys, and you saved about State Department employees and evacuated about another 30 Americans that night?
Yes, that's correct. State Department and CIA employees. So that's correct. We ended up unofficially, and again, we get those counts, and we're very lucky that we still have some friends within the own department, the agency, that can give us those numbers, and those numbers come from the locals on the ground. And that's the benefit of doing what we do, is we do maintain friendships with people that are in these countries, locals that are in these countries. And I feel I have my heart goes out to them because they're caught in the middle of all this, and there are some good people there. Not all the Muslims are terrorists. Islamists are, but not all the Muslims are. Some of them actually want to help, and you know, we've left them, and who knows if they're even alive to this day. But just so people know, I just want to make sure that our numbers come from some pretty solid sources, not from the U.S. government, from people that are actually on the ground living there. Some are even local that actually live in the country still.
So y'all fall back at this point, and you talked about commandeering the assets that you used to get out of there. Describe that, if you would.
Yeah, the Tripoli team, which consisted of Glenn Doherty, and there was also 3 other GRS operators. They're still working, so I can't give you their names. And then 2 Delta Force operators, and then also an interpreter. They came from Tripoli. They actually paid approximately $20,000 to rent a charter jet, to charter a jet, just like chartering a jet here. It looked like a little Embraer jet that you'd see United or Delta fly. And they flew from Tripoli to Benghazi. When we left to go to the airfield, they were sitting there waiting for us. They had no idea, the crew had no idea what they were